My husband let another woman give our daughter a new name. The cabinet card arrived on a Wednesday afternoon, slid under my door by a boy from Bay State Portrait Rooms, and for 3 full seconds I thought it had been delivered to the wrong room. Then I saw my daughter's face. Nell stood beside a woman in black silk, her small hand resting on the woman's knee, as if she had been placed there and told not to move. Her hair was brushed so flat it shone like varnish. Around her throat was a narrow blue ribbon I had tied myself that morning before leaving for the studio. On the back of the card, in a neat hand that was not mine, someone had written, "Mrs. Augusta Partridge and her daughter, Helen." Not Nell. Helen. I sat down on the bed because my knees had become unreliable things. The room around me stayed exactly as it had been 5 minutes before. The brown pitcher on the washstand, the cracked window where cold March air came through in one thin line, the little chair with Nell's apron folded over its back, my retouching pencils rolled in a strip of flannel. Nothing had moved, nothing had broken. Only my child had been given away on paper. I turned the card over again. Nell's face was not smiling. A stranger might have called it solemn, the way people called children solemn when they were frightened and too well trained to cry. But I knew every weather of that face. I knew the small crease that came between her brows when she was trying to be brave. I knew how the left corner of her mouth tucked inward when she wanted me and had been told not to ask. She was 5 years old. 5 years and 4 months, if a person cared for the truth. My hands did not shake at first. That frightened me more than shaking would have. I laid the card flat on the bed and pressed both palms beside it, as if I could keep the room from tipping. In the boarding house below, Mrs. Calder was calling to the grocer. Somewhere a door shut, someone laughed. The world continued with its ordinary small noises while I stared at my living child printed beneath another woman's name. I had seen many photographs in my life, more than most wives in Worcester, and certainly more than Samuel thought proper. I worked 6 days a week at Larkin's studio, sitting behind a curtain with a magnifying glass and a lamp, softening pockmarks, brightening dull eyes, narrowing waists, smoothing the hard line around mouths that had learned disappointment too early. People paid to be improved on paper. They paid to look kinder, younger, richer, more beloved. But I had never seen a photograph used to steal a place in the world. I picked it up again and brought it closer to the window. The mount was cream cardstock with a gilt edge. Bay State Portrait Rooms, Main Street. Not our studio. I would have known if Nell had been brought to Larkin's. I would have felt it in the floorboards. Augusta's gloved hand rested on the arm of the chair. Her mourning ring showed plainly. She had wanted it to show. Her chin was lifted, not high enough to look proud in a vulgar way, only high enough to say that the world had always obeyed her and saw no reason to stop. Her dress was black silk, tight at the throat, trimmed in jet beads. She looked like a woman who had survived grief and turned it into furniture. My daughter stood beside her in a white dress I had not bought. That was when my hands began to shake. The white dress was new. Its sleeves were puffed, the collar edged in cheap lace, trying to look costly. The hem fell badly, too long in front. Whoever had dressed her had not known how Nell sat on the floor, how she climbed stairs, how she caught her toe in anything that fell past her shoe. I could see one little boot peeking out, the right one, with the scuff near the toe from when she had knelt by the stove to warm her fingers. My child, my boot, my ribbon. Another woman's caption. I do not remember crossing the room. I remember finding myself by the mantel, one hand braced against it, the card held to my chest. On the shelf sat the tin bird Nell loved, a little wind-up thing with chipped blue paint on one wing. Samuel had bought it from a peddler when she was 3, back when he still brought home foolish things because he liked to see her laugh. The key was bent. It no longer walked properly. When wound, it dragged one foot and made a clicking sound like a small heart losing courage. That morning, Nell had held the bird in both hands and said, "Mama, will you come straight home today?" "As straight as the streetcar can carry me," I told her. She had not laughed. She had been standing in her nightdress, hair loose over her shoulders, bare feet curling against the cold floor. Mrs. Calder had not yet brought up breakfast. Samuel was buttoning his cuffs by the mirror, moving with the strained patience he used whenever he wanted the morning to pass without a question. "Aunt Augusta says big girls do not ask the same thing every day," Nell said. Samuel's fingers stopped at his cuff. I turned from the washstand. "What thing?" Nell looked at him, then down at the bird. "If their mama is coming home." I crossed the room and knelt in front of her. "You may ask me every day until you are 100 if you like, and I will answer every day. I come home." She touched the blue ribbon laid ready on the chair. "Even if I am not here?" The room changed then, though I did not understand how. It grew narrow. Samuel's cufflink fell to the rug. "Why would you not be here?" I asked. Nell pressed her lips together. I knew that look too. It meant a grown person had laid a secret on her small back and called it a game. Samuel picked up his cufflink. "Children say things. Augusta was only teasing." "I did not ask you." His face hardened, then softened in the way that had once made me forgive him before I knew forgiveness could be trained out of a woman by repetition. "Ruth, it is 7:30. You will be late." I tied Nell's hair with the blue ribbon. Her hair was the color of chestnut shells after rain, and it never stayed where I put it. I kissed the part in her hair. "I come home," I said again. She held on to my sleeve. Samuel stood behind me. I could feel him waiting. He was not cruel in the loud ways people recognized. He did not shout often. He did not strike. He did not drink away his wages. He paid the rent when he could and apologized when he could not. He had, in public, the mild face of a man who would help an old woman cross a street. The trouble with Samuel was not that he had no heart. It was that his heart changed direction whenever his sister entered a room. Augusta Partridge was not his mother. People sometimes made that mistake from the way he watched her for approval. She was his elder sister by 13 years, widowed before 30, childless, well-housed, and dressed always as if she were attending a funeral that had improved her standing. Their mother had died when Samuel was 6. Their father, a carpenter with lungs ruined by dust, had followed 3 winters later. Augusta had raised Samuel as much as a sister could raise a boy while still a girl herself. He owed her. She never said so. She did not need to. Debt can live in silence for years if everyone feeds it. When I married Samuel, Augusta kissed my cheek and told me I had pretty hands. It took me 6 months to understand it had not been a compliment. Pretty hands, in her language, meant hands that had not yet proved useful. After Nell was born, she said the child had the bell brow, though I had carried her, labored for her, bled for her, and nursed her through a fever that left me so thin my wedding ring slid off in the dishwater. "Blood shows," Augusta said, touching Nell's forehead. "So does milk," I answered. Samuel told me later I had embarrassed him. In the first years, Augusta visited twice a month, then once a week. Then, after Samuel lost his position at Whitcomb's and found a poorer one behind the dry goods counter at Haskell and Reed, she began coming nearly every day. She brought broth, mittens, oranges wrapped in paper, books with moral children in them, and advice folded into every parcel. Nell needed more order. Nell needed better air. Nell needed a larger room. Nell needed to be among refined habits. Nell needed, most of all, not to hear her mother speak sharply. "Children absorb atmosphere," Augusta said one evening while removing her gloves finger by finger. One must consider what the child breathes. I was mending Samuel's shirt by lamplight after 11 hours at the studio. My eyes burned. Nell slept in the curtained alcove, one hand open on the coverlet. "She breathes coal smoke like the rest of Worcester," I said. "If you can afford to improve the air, I will thank you for a house on a hill." Samuel looked at me over the newspaper. Ruth. Only my name. He had learned to make it into a reprimand. Augusta smiled. "I meant moral atmosphere." "Then say moral." Samuel folded the paper. "Ruth, please." Please meant surrender. Please meant smooth the tablecloth after someone else had spilled the ink. Please meant let Augusta go home feeling generous and let me go to bed feeling ashamed. I often did. That is a hard thing to admit. Women like me are expected to say we knew from the first, fought from the first, never let a hand close around what was ours. But life is not made of firsts. It is made of mornings when bread must be sliced, rent must be found, coughs must be watched, collars must be washed, and a woman grows tired enough to call peace by the name of wisdom. So I let Augusta bring oranges. I let her correct Nell's posture. I let her speak of my work as the studio business, in the tone some women used for illness. I let Samuel say his sister only wished to help. Then Nell began asking if I would come home. And now the card lay in my hand. Mrs. Augusta Partridge and her daughter, Helen. I did not wait for Samuel. He would not return from Haskell and read until 6, and by then I knew he would have had time to arrange his face. I put on my coat, pinned my hat with fingers that missed twice, slipped the cabinet card into my reticule, and went downstairs. Mrs. Calder stood in the hall with a basket of laundry against her hip. She was a square woman with gray hair and a widow's talent for seeing through walls. "You are home early, Mrs. Bell." "Where is Nell?" "In the kitchen with Josie, eating a biscuit." The breath I'd been holding came out so hard it hurt. "Do not let anyone take her." Mrs. Calder's eyes narrowed. She did not ask anyone who. She'd kept a boarding house for 20 years. She knew families could be more dangerous than strangers. "No one takes a child from my kitchen without passing me. Not Samuel, not Mrs. Partridge, no one." At Samuel's name, something in her face shifted, but she only nodded. "Go do what you must." I wanted to run into the kitchen and gather Nell into my arms. I wanted to carry her upstairs, lock the door, push the bureau against it, and sit with my back to the wall until all the people who knew better than I did what my child needed grew tired and died of their certainty. Instead, I went out. The street was wet from morning rain. Hooves had cut the mud into black ridges. A streetcar bell clanged at the corner, and women lifted their skirts to cross. Worcester was not Boston, though Augusta liked to speak as if living here required apology. It was brick mills, church spires, machine shops, boarding houses, shops with striped awnings, boys selling papers, Irish girls in shawls, Swedish men with lunch pails, Yankee widows counting pennies behind lace curtains. It was smoke and bells and people trying to become respectable before respectability moved its chair farther away. I walked fast. Bay State portrait rooms occupied the second floor above a jeweler. I had passed it often and judged its window display unfairly, as photographers do. Too much paint on the cheeks, too many painted columns, babies propped like trophies, brides arranged as if surrendering to upholstery. The bell over the door rang when I entered. The front room smelled of varnish, dust, and hot metal from the stove. Cabinet cards stood in racks along the wall. A young man with pomaded hair looked up from trimming mounts. "Good afternoon, madam." I set the card on the counter. "Who ordered this?" His polite expression dimmed into caution. "If you wish additional copies." "Who ordered it?" He looked at the photograph, then at me. I saw the moment he recognized Nell in my face. Not because she resembled me strongly. She favored Samuel around the eyes. But grief has a family likeness of its own. "Orders are private," he said. "That is my child. Madam, I do not doubt. Her name is Nell Bell, not Helen. I tied that ribbon in her hair this morning. I want to know who brought her here and when." From behind the curtain came the scrape of a chair. A woman emerged, older than the young man, with sleeves rolled beneath a dark apron. A photographer's wife, I guessed, or sister. She had hypo stains near her nails and no patience for foolishness. "Edward," she said, "go wash the trays." "Mrs. Pike, now!" He went. Mrs. Pike picked up the card and studied it. "You are the mother?" "Yes." "The lady said you were ill." The room steadied around that sentence. Not because it comforted me, but because it gave the fear a shape. "What lady?" "Mrs. Partridge. She came Monday with the gentleman and the child." "What gentleman?" She looked at me carefully. "The child's father, I supposed." Samuel had been in this room. Samuel had watched another woman place our daughter beside her and call it a portrait. I gripped the counter. Was my daughter crying? "No, but she was not happy." It was an honest answer. I valued it more than kindness. "Mrs. Partridge ordered 12 cards," Mrs. Pike continued. "She gave the inscription for the backs. My husband said it was irregular to write such things by hand here, but she paid extra." "Did she say why?" "She said the child would soon reside with her, and people may as well grow used to the proper form." Proper form. I could hear Augusta saying it, each word polished until no human warmth remained. "I need the order slip." Mrs. Pike shook her head. "I cannot give you another customer's paper. She used my child." "I know." "Then help me!" She glanced toward the darkroom curtain. In that pause, I saw her measuring risk. Her husband's business, gossip, a customer with money, a working mother with a face gone white from fear. Finally, she took a pencil from behind her ear. "I will not give you the slip, but I can write what I remember seeing. Date, number of cards, name requested, who stood for the portrait. I will sign it. My husband will be angry. I am sorry. Do not be. Men survive anger better than women survive obedience." I almost laughed. It came out like a breath breaking. She wrote on a sheet of studio paper, slowly, with a firm hand. While she wrote, I looked at the display near the stove, a mother in a high collar with twins on her lap, a young soldier. A dead infant photographed in a cradle, cheeks tinted pink by someone who thought color could bargain with God. Mrs. Pike sanded the paper and handed it to me. "Mrs. Partridge asked whether the child's name could be touched out on the school ribbon in another card," she said quietly. "What school ribbon?" "The child had a blue ribbon with letters stitched at one end. N.B., I think. It had slipped forward. Mrs. Partridge disliked it." My throat closed. I had stitched those letters with blue silk thread on a winter evening when Nell was 3 and kept losing her ribbons at Mrs. Calder's. N.B. for Nell Bell. Small stitches, crooked at the bend of the B because Nell had climbed into my lap and bumped my elbow. "Did you touch them out?" "No. My husband said no one would notice." I noticed. That is what saved me. Not courage at first, not wisdom, not even anger. It was the habit of noticing what other people thought too small to matter. Mrs. Pike put the cabinet card in an envelope. "Keep it flat." "There are more?" "They are to be delivered tomorrow morning to Mrs. Partridge's house." "On Walnut Street." She nodded. "You know it." "I know the parlor carpet. I know the chair by the window. I know the sound of her clock. I know all the rooms where I am not wanted." Mrs. Pike's face softened, but she did not touch me. I was grateful. Had anyone touched me then, I might have dissolved. I left with the envelope under my coat. When I returned to the boarding house, Nell was asleep on the kitchen settle with flour on her cheek. Mrs. Calder sat near her, shelling peas into a bowl. "No one came," she said. "Thank you. That thanks has a long face." I sat at the table. My legs had begun to tremble, as if they had waited until the work was done. "Mrs. Calder, if a father signs a paper, can he give a child to his sister?" She stopped shelling. "Not like a chair, no. But can he arrange it so the mother is told afterward? Men arrange many things. Law is slower to object than God, and God is often quiet. I need someone who knows." She wiped her hands on her apron. "Mr. Alden boards my nephew's office boy, lawyer on Pearl Street. Not grand, but honest enough to be useful. You will go before supper." "I have Nell." "Nell will stay with me." "She may wake." "Then she will wake to biscuits and me. Worse things have happened to a child." I looked at my daughter, her lashes dark against her cheek. One hand curled near her mouth. 5 years old, and already adults had made her practice silence. "Mrs. Calder?" "Yes." "If Samuel comes, do not tell him where I went." She resumed shelling peas. "If Mr. Bell asks me a question today, he will receive a sermon so long he will forget what he wanted." Mr. Alden's office was above a stationer's shop and smelled of paper, damp wool, and stove ash. He was a thin man, with a beard too large for his face and spectacles that made his eyes look startled. I had expected to feel ashamed in a lawyer's office. Instead, I felt cold, which is different. Shame bends the head. Cold keeps it upright, because movement wastes heat. He read Mrs. Pike's statement. He read the back of the cabinet card. His mouth tightened. "Your husband knew of this sitting?" "He was there." "And you were not informed?" "No." "Has anyone accused you of neglect, drink, improper conduct?" "I work at a photographic studio." "That is not neglect." "Some people speak as if it were." "Some people speak because silence would reveal they have nothing useful in their heads." I liked him then. He asked about our home, Samuel's wages, my wages, Nell's health, Augusta's house, whether there had been violence. I answered plainly. Plainness became a rope I could hold. "A father has standing," he said at last, "more than is fair at times. But a court will not prefer an aunt over a mother simply because the aunt has a better parlor. Not if the mother is sober, employed, and the child is cared for. Has Mrs. Partridge attempted to enroll the child somewhere?" "I do not know." "Find out." "How?" "Look for the institution that would impress her." Women who act from pride usually choose a stage first and a reason afterward. St. Clement's Academy came into my mind at once. Augusta had mentioned it 3 times in the last month. A girls' school on Crown Hill with a wrought iron gate, a headmistress from Philadelphia, and pupils who wore gloves on visiting days. Mr. Alden wrote something on a card. "If you learn of any intended transfer of residence or schooling without your consent, come to me at once. If necessary, I can petition for an injunction and custody hearing. But speed matters. Possession is not law, Mrs. Bell, but it often dresses like law and frightens people into accepting it." "They mean to do it soon," I said. He leaned back. "What makes you sure?" I thought of Nell asking, "Even if I am not here?" My daughter has begun saying goodbye before I leave the room. He did not ask me to explain. When I came back to the boarding house, Samuel's hat hung in the hall. For a moment, I stood with one hand on the banister and listened. His voice came from our room upstairs, low and urgent. Mrs. Calder's voice answered from the landing, loud enough for all 3 floors to benefit. "I told you, Mr. Bell, your wife went to fetch thread.
A woman may fetch thread without filing a notice at City Hall.
How long ago?
Long enough for thread to be fetched.
Where is Nell?
Eating.
I would like her upstairs.
Then you may like it. Liking is free.
I almost smiled. Then Samuel stepped into the hall above and saw me. His face went through 3 expressions before choosing concern. Ruth, where have you been?
Fetching thread?
Mrs. Calder called. I went upstairs. He followed me into our room and closed the door. You left the studio early, he said. Yes. Mr. Larkin sent a boy to Haskell and Reed, said you had not returned after dinner. I took off my gloves slowly. Were you worried? Of course I was worried. The cabinet card lay inside my reticule. I did not take it out, not yet. I wanted to see whether truth would approach him if I left the door open. Samuel, did you take Nell to be photographed Monday? His eyes moved once toward the window. That was all. Augusta wished for a likeness, he said. You know how fond she is of the child. A likeness of herself with my daughter. Our daughter. Did Augusta write a name on the back? He rubbed his forehead. Ruth, you are making more of this than it deserves. There it was. The little cupboard where men put women's terror when it inconveniences them. More than it deserves. Too much feeling, too quick to take offense, too tired, too sharp, too much mother until the day they need you to be less. What name? It was only a fancy. What name? He looked at me then, and I saw anger under the concern. Not anger because he had been caught, anger because I had refused to be managed gently. Helen is a family name. Our child's name is Nell. Nell is a pet name. Her full name is Eleanor Ruth Bell. You stood beside me at her baptism. I know what I stood beside. Do you? His mouth tightened. Augusta believes Eleanor is too heavy for a small child. Helen would be easier socially. Socially. Do not repeat me in that tone. What tone suits a mother whose child has been renamed for convenience? No one has renamed her. I took the card from my reticule and placed it on the table. Samuel looked at it. Color rose along his neck. He did not reach for it. Where did you get that? A boy delivered it here. It was meant for Augusta. Yes. That seems to be the trouble with everyone lately. My daughter is meant for Augusta. The photograph is meant for Augusta. The school is meant for Augusta. The air in my child's lungs is meant for Augusta. What school? The question came too quickly. I heard it. He heard that I heard it. St. Clement's? I asked. He turned away. You have been talking to Mrs. Calder. No. I have been listening to my child. He gripped the back of the chair. Samuel had beautiful hands. That was one of the first things I had noticed about him when he came to my father's shop years before to buy a frame. Long fingers, clean nails, careful movements. I had thought careful hands meant a careful heart. Ruth, Nell would have advantages there. There. At Augusta's and later at school, lessons, music, proper companions. She has a mother. She has a mother who works until dark in rooms with men. The sentence did not surprise me. It had Augusta's shape. Samuel had only lent it his voice. I work behind a curtain with Mrs. Larkin 6 feet away and Mr. Larkin too afraid of his wife to breathe improperly. People talk. People also lie. It seems to be a local industry. You will not turn this into one of your scenes. I laughed then, not loudly. My scenes? Yes, your scenes. Your sharpness, your suspicion. You make it impossible to help you. Is that what you were doing Monday? Helping me? He lowered his voice. Augusta can give Nell what we cannot. What I cannot, you mean? What we
Cannot. Then why was I not asked? Silence. Samuel. He looked suddenly tired. Because you would have refused. There are moments when betrayal is not a knife, but a door opening onto a room you have been living beside for years. You look in and understand that the furniture has been there all along. Yes, I said. I would have refused. And is that fair? To the child? Do not use her against me. I am thinking of her. You are thinking of Augusta's opinion of you. He flinched. That reached him. Not enough to wake him, but enough to bruise. You do not understand what my sister sacrificed. I understand sacrifice. I have simply never demanded repayment from a 5-year-old. He stared at me as if I had slapped him. Downstairs, Nell laughed at something Josie said. The sound rose through the floorboards, small and bright and alive. Samuel's face changed when he heard it. For a heartbeat, I saw the father he might have been without fear. Then the softness closed. Augusta is coming after supper, he said. We will discuss this calmly. No! You cannot forbid my sister to enter. Watch me! This is my room, too. Then remember there are 3 people in it. He put on his hat with shaking hands. I am going to speak with Augusta. Of course you are. He stopped at the door. What does that mean? It means every road in your mind seems to end at her parlor. He left. I locked the door after him and stood there until I heard his steps on the stairs. Then I sank onto the bed and pressed my fist against my mouth so Nell would not hear the sound that came out of me. I had thought fear was the worst thing a mother could feel. It is not. Fear at least has movement in it. It runs, hides, fights, prays. The worst thing is the moment after fear, when you understand that someone you trusted has already imagined your absence and found it convenient. I had been edited out before the photograph was printed. That night, Nell slept in my arms. I told Mrs. Calder she had a cough, though no one believed it, and brought her upstairs early. Samuel did not return until nearly 10. By then, I'd pushed the trunk against the door and laid his folded blanket on the chair outside through the narrow opening, with a pillow on top. Ruth, he said softly from the hall, do not do this. Nell stirred. I held her closer. Go to your sister, I said through the door. You have practice. He stood there a long time. At last, I heard him take the blanket. The floorboard creaked under his weight as he walked away. Nell's breath warmed my collarbone. In sleep, she was younger than 5. All children are younger in sleep. Their faces returned to the country they came from before words were put into them. Near midnight, she whispered, Mama, I am here. Will Aunt Augusta be cross? That is Aunt Augusta's work, not yours. She said I must learn to answer to Helen. My arms tightened before I could stop them. When did she say that? In the carriage. What carriage? When Papa took me for the picture? I closed my eyes. What else did she say? Nell was quiet so long I thought she had fallen asleep again. Then she said, If I am good, I can have the south room. It has roses on the wall. She said my bird is shabby, but I may bring it until I forget it. Until I forget it. You do not have to forget anything, I said. She said you would visit. The word visit entered me like cold water. I am your mother. Mothers do not visit their children like callers. But Papa said it would rest you. I did not speak. There are sentences a child gives you because someone placed them in her hands. You cannot throw them back. You must take them gently, even when they burn. Nell touched my cheek. Are you tired? Yes. Too tired to be my mama? I sat up, taking her with me. The room was dark except for the street lamp shining through the thin curtains. It laid pale bars across the floor, across the trunk, across the little tin bird on the mantel. Listen to me, Nell Bell. I may be tired, I may be cross, I may burn the porridge and prick my finger and forget where I put the soap, but I am not too tired to be your mama. No one gets to decide that for me. No one gets to decide that for you. She pressed her face into my neck and cried without sound. That silent crying frightened me more than wailing would have. Children should make noise when their hearts break. Someone had taught mine to do it quietly. In the morning, Samuel was gone before we rose. Mrs. Calder brought coffee to my door and a plate of toast for Nell. "Your husband left at 6, she said. Looked like a man who slept on a question. Questions make poor pillows. So do lies." I handed her the cabinet card. She held it at arm's length, squinting. Well, that woman has more nerve than hairpins. I need to know if Augusta has arranged St. Clement's. Then ask St. Clement's. They may not tell me. Take the child. I looked at Nell, who was feeding toast crumbs to the tin bird and pretending not to listen. "No," I said, "not yet. I will not parade her through the very place they mean to use." Mrs. Calder nodded once. "Then take me." And so we went, Mrs. Calder and I, 2 women in plain coats riding the streetcar up toward Crown Hill, while my daughter remained in the boarding house kitchen with Josie, a rolling pin, and firm instructions that no bell, partridge, saint, prophet, president, or angel was to remove her. St. Clement's Academy stood behind an iron fence, 3 stories of red brick with white trim and windows shining like judgment. The girls who passed through that gate did not have to learn early which grocer would wait 2 days for payment.
They would learn French verbs, watercolor, posture, perhaps enough arithmetic to supervise a cook. They would be taught to enter rooms as if someone had already saved them a chair. I wanted those things for Nell. That was the cruel part. I wanted good shoes, clean air, music lessons, books with unbroken spines. I wanted the world to open for her when she touched it. Augusta's sin was not wanting those things. Augusta's sin was believing they required my disappearance. Inside, a maid brought us to a small office where a woman of about 50 sat behind a desk. She wore grey wool, a watch pinned to her bodice, and the expression of a person who had spent years correcting handwriting and souls. "I am Miss Harrow," she said. "How may I assist you?" My mouth went dry. Mrs. Calder stepped on my foot. Not hard. Enough. "My name is Ruth Bell," I said. "I believe my daughter may have been entered here without my consent." Miss Harrow's face did not change, but her eyes sharpened. "Your daughter's name?" "Eleanor Ruth Bell. She is called Nell." Miss Harrow opened a drawer and removed a stack of cards. She did not hurry. I heard each card pass beneath her fingers. "We have an inquiry for a Helen Eleanor Bell," she said. Mrs. Calder made a sound like a kettle considering a boil. "Who made the inquiry?" I asked. "Mrs. Augusta Partridge." "Not the mother." "She represented herself as the child's guardian-to-be." Guardian-to-be. A position invented in a parlor and carried up a hill as if grammar could make it lawful. "Was my husband with her?" "A gentleman called yesterday to confirm that the matter would be settled shortly." "His name?" "Mr. Samuel Bell." I felt Mrs. Calder's hand at my elbow. I had not realized I swayed. Miss Harrow folded the inquiry card. "Mrs. Bell, has there been a court appointment?" "No." "Any written consent from you?" "No." "Then no child will be enrolled here." The simplicity of it nearly undid me. No sermon, no weighing of my collar against Augusta's silk, no careful question about whether a working mother truly knew best. Just no. "Thank you," I whispered. "Do not thank me yet."
Miss Harrow said. People who use schools to settle family matters often return with additional persuasion. You would be wise to put your objection in writing. I have a lawyer. Good. She took a sheet of paper and wrote several lines, then sanded and signed it. This states that an inquiry was made by Mrs. Partridge for Helen Eleanor Bell, represented as soon to be in her guardianship, and that you appeared to object. I dislike disorder, Mrs. Bell. I dislike it especially when children are made to carry it. I took the paper. May I ask one thing? She said. Yes. Is the child safe today? My answer came before thought. Yes. Keep her so. Outside, the wind cut across Crown Hill and stung my eyes. Mrs. Calder and I walked to the streetcar stop without speaking. When we sat on the bench, she took my hand. Her palm was rough and warm. There, she said. Now you have paper. Paper seems thin. So is a blade. The streetcar bell sounded below. I looked down the hill at the city, smoke rising from chimneys, roofs slick from last night's rain, people moving through their errands with baskets and bundles and secrets. Somewhere in that city, Samuel was standing behind a counter measuring cloth for women who trusted him to cut straight. I wondered if he had ever cut anything straight in his life when Augusta's hand rested on the ruler. We went from St. Clement's to Mr. Alden. He read Miss Harrow's statement, Mrs. Pike's statement, and the photograph. He took off his spectacles and rubbed the bridge of his nose. This is enough to act. How quickly? Today, I will draft a petition and a notice. I want your husband served before Mrs. Partridge can produce a competing story. A competing lie. In court, lies wear good coats. He rang for his clerk. What will happen?
I will ask the court to forbid removal of the child from your residence or school without your written consent until a hearing. We will also state that an attempt has been made to represent the child under another name. Judges dislike confusion over identity. It suggests mischief. Mischief. Such a small word for a hand reaching toward a child. Will Samuel lose his rights? Not today. I nodded. I had not expected miracles. I had learned to be suspicious of sudden rescue, even when I prayed for it. Mrs. Bell, Mr. Alden said more gently, this will become known. I know. Mrs. Partridge has standing in certain circles. So I have been told. Your work may be discussed. It has been discussed already. Your marriage may not survive the process. I looked at the cabinet card lying on his desk, Augusta's hand on the chair, Nell's little mouth held tight, Helen written where Nell belonged. Mr. Alden, my marriage has already survived too much of the wrong thing. He held my gaze for a moment, then nodded. When I returned home, Nell ran to me from the kitchen and collided with my skirt. She had flour on both sleeves and a smear of molasses near her ear. Mama, Mrs. Calder let me cut biscuits. I see you cut yourself into one. She laughed, a real laugh this time, surprised out of her before fear could catch it. I knelt and held her face between my hands. Did anyone come? Papa came. The hallway tilted. Mrs. Calder appeared behind her. And Papa left. Nell nodded solemnly. Mrs. Calder said I was up to my elbows in dough and could not receive gentlemen. Even fathers? I asked. She said especially fathers who forget to knock. I kissed her forehead. Mrs. Calder is a learned woman. In our room, I found a note from Samuel on the table. Ruth, do not force this into ugliness. Augusta is willing to speak with you tomorrow at her house. Nell's future should be considered by calm minds. I beg you not to be led by wounded pride. Samuel. Wounded pride. I folded the note once and placed it in the stove. I watched it brown, curl, and burn.
Then I removed the cabinet card from my reticule and set it on the mantel beside the tin bird. Nell climbed onto the chair to look. "That is the picture," she whispered. "Yes." "Aunt Augusta said I must stand still or I would spoil it." "You did not spoil anything." "She called me Helen." "I know." Nell touched the blue ribbon in the photograph. "Will the picture make me Helen?" I took her hand and pressed it to my cheek. "No, pictures can lie." "But you make pictures." "I mend them. That is different." "Can you mend that one?" I looked at the card. I could scrape away the ink from the back. I could cut Augusta out with scissors. I could burn it. All three tempted me. "Not yet," I said. "Why?" "Because sometimes we keep a lie long enough to show it to someone who can stop it." She considered that. "Then we can throw it away?" "Then we can decide." At supper, Samuel did not come. Mrs. Calder served stew in the dining room, and the boarders pretended not to watch me while watching me with all their might. News travels through a boarding house without feet. By 9, everyone knew Mr. Bell had slept elsewhere. Mrs. Bell had gone out twice in one day, and Mrs. Partridge's name had been spoken in Mrs. Calder's kitchen with enough force to rattle lids. One of the boarders, a schoolteacher named Miss Voss, stopped beside my chair as she left the table. "If Nell needs lessons at home for a time," she said, not looking directly at me, "I have primers." That was all. Kindness often arrives disguised as practicality because people are embarrassed to be seen carrying it. After Nell slept, I sat by the lamp and wrote everything I remembered. Not in fine language, not like a lady composing a letter meant to be saved. Dates, words, who said them, where Nell stood, the white dress, the south room, the school inquiry, Samuel's admission that I would have refused, the sentence about my work, the photograph, the name. My hand cramped. I kept writing. At 10:30, there was a knock. Not Samuel's. Samuel tapped lightly when guilty. This knock struck the door once, waited, then struck again, certain the wood would recognize authority. Augusta. Nell turned in sleep. I rose, lifted the cabinet card from the mantel, and opened the door only as far as the chain allowed. Augusta stood in the hall, wearing black velvet and a hat trimmed with a narrow plume. She smelled faintly of violet water and winter air. Samuel stood behind her, face pale. "Ruth," Augusta said, "this is beneath all of us." "Then you should not have climbed down to it." Her eyes moved over my shoulder, searching for the room, the child, the evidence of poverty she could arrange into accusation. "May we come in?" "No." Samuel's mouth tightened. "Ruth, open the door." "Nell is asleep." Augusta's expression softened in a way I had once mistaken for feeling. "I know you are distressed. Any mother would be." "That is an interesting sentence from you." "You are not thinking clearly." "You have all said so. It begins to sound rehearsed." She removed one glove. Her hands were white and fine, with veins like blue thread. "Let us speak plainly. You are overworked. Samuel is overburdened. The child is sensitive. She requires steadiness. She has it." Augusta looked past me at the narrow room, the bed, the trunk, the washstand, the chair where Nell's stockings dried by the stove. "This is not steadiness. This is endurance." The worst of it was that she was partly right. Poverty gives cruel people useful sentences. "Endurance has kept many children alive," I said. "Alive is not the whole duty of a parent. Nor is comfort the whole proof of love." Samuel stepped forward. "No one doubts your love." I turned to the cabinet card so they could see the back.
You misspelt it as Helen.
Samuel looked away. Augusta did not. Her eyes flickered, then settled. A name can be adjusted. Children do better with names that carry family dignity. She carries my name too. Ruth is not on the card. Exactly. A faint color rose in her cheeks. You are determined to misunderstand. I understand perfectly. You had my daughter photographed as yours. You asked a school to prepare for her under your guardianship. You told her she would have a room in your house. You told her to answer to another name. Samuel whispered, Augusta. There it was again. Not Ruth, stop. Not my wife is right. Augusta. A plea to the sun not to burn what it had already set on fire. Augusta's voice lowered. The child would be better with me. The hallway became very still. Say it again, I said. Samuel closed his eyes. Augusta lifted her chin. Nell would be better with me. I felt no surprise, only a terrible calm, like a pond freezing from the center outward. Then we are finished being polite. Politeness is all that has kept this from scandal. No, silence has, and silence is leaving. I closed the door. Samuel put his hand against it from the other side. Ruth. I slid the bolt. Ruth, please. Please again. The old key in an old lock. It no longer fit. I stood with my forehead against the door until their steps retreated. Then I turned and saw Nell sitting up in bed, eyes wide. Mama? I went to her. You are safe. Did Aunt Augusta come for me? She came to talk. Her talking feels like taking. I climbed into bed and held her. Then we will not listen alone anymore. The notice was served the next morning. Samuel came to Haskell and Reed at 11 to find a man waiting by the ribbon counter with a folded paper. Mrs. Calder's nephew, who worked errands for Mr. Alden, told me later that Samuel opened it, read the first line, and sat down on a stool meant for customers buying gloves. Mr. Reed himself had to ask whether he was ill. Augusta received hers at noon. By 1, a carriage stopped before the boarding house. By 1:05, Mrs. Calder had placed herself in the front hall like a courthouse with an apron. I was upstairs, pinning Nell's hair. We were not hiding. That mattered to me. I had kept her home from the kitchen because I did not want her to witness the full force of Augusta's anger. But I would not crouch in the corner like a thief guarding stolen goods. Augusta's voice carried through the floorboards. I wish to see Mrs. Bell. Mrs. Bell is occupied. I am her husband's sister. A woman can survive that condition in the hall. How dare you? With practice. Nell looked at me. Mrs. Calder is being large. Yes, I said. Mrs. Calder is very good at being large. Augusta did not come upstairs. The notice had done what Mr. Alden promised. It had given the door a second lock, one made of paper and consequence. She left after 10 minutes. From the window I saw her carriage pull away, the black plume on her hat trembling with every rut. That afternoon I returned to Larkin's studio. Mr. Larkin was photographing a couple in the front room. Mrs. Larkin met me by the retouching curtain. She was a small woman with iron-grey hair and the only eyes in Worcester that frightened her husband more than customers did. You missed yesterday afternoon, she said. Yes. And this morning? Yes. Will there be more absences? I had prepared an apology, but it withered. Perhaps. She studied me. Is the child ill? No. Someone trying to take her. Mrs. Larkin did not gasp. She had photographed families for 30 years. She knew what sat behind good collars. Did they fail? For now. Then sit. There is a negative of Mrs. Holcomb that requires mercy. Give her less chin, but do not make her a stranger. I sat. Work can be cruel when grief is fresh. It asks the hands to behave, while the heart throws itself against walls.
But work can also save. A pencil knows nothing of betrayal. A glass negative does not ask whether your husband slept at his sister's. It presents a surface and says, "Here, attend." For 3 hours, I softened lines, lifted shadows, and made rich people look like they had never been afraid. My own fear sat beside me, breathing, but it did not drive the pencil. Near closing, Mrs. Larkin came behind the curtain with tea in a chipped cup.
We have a small room above the studio, she said. Used for storage, dry, cold in winter, hot in summer. A woman and a child could make misery of it if needed.
My pencil stopped. I cannot pay much at first.
I did not ask for much at first.
Mrs. Larkin,
do not thank me. Gratitude takes time, and I am behind on orders.
She left the tea. I looked at the negatives hanging in their rack, rows of faces waiting to become fixed. I thought of Nell's face on Augusta's card, fixed beneath the wrong name. I thought of the room above the studio, dry and hot and cold, and hours if needed. For the first time since Wednesday, I saw a path that did not end at Augusta's door. The hearing was set for the following Monday. 4 days can be longer than a winter when a child is being contested. Samuel came twice to the boarding house, each time alone, each time asking to speak with me. The first time, I refused. The second time, I met him in Mrs. Calder's parlor with the door open and Mrs. Calder audibly polishing silver in the hall, though she owned almost none. Samuel looked thinner. His collar sat poorly. I hated that I noticed. Love does not die all at once just because trust does. It lingers in useless observations. He has not slept. He forgot his scarf. There is a thread on his sleeve. "Ruth," he said, "Augusta is unwell." I am not her physician. She has taken this very hard. So has Nell. He flinched. Good. I never meant to hurt the child. Did you mean to hurt me? He looked at his hands. I meant to find a solution.
To what problem?
Do not make me say it cruelly.
Say it accurately.
His jaw worked. We cannot provide what Augusta can.
Then say poverty. Do not call my motherhood a problem because you are ashamed of our rent.
It is not only poverty.
No?
You are always tired. You come home smelling of chemicals. Your eyes are red. You snap at her.
I snap at kettles and stuck drawers. I do not ask my child to stop being mine.
You snap at me.
Yes, more lately. I wonder why.
He stood and paced once to the window. Outside, boys rolled a hoop along the pavement. A peddler called apples. Life, careless as ever, went on. When Augusta offered, he said, I thought it could be arranged gently. Nell would spend more time there, then perhaps sleep there, then school. You would see her often.
You planned my grief in stages.
He turned. I planned her good.
Without me.
Because you would say no to anything Augusta suggested.
I am saying no to being erased.
His face twisted.
Why must you use such words?
I rose and fetched the cabinet card from the mantel. I had brought it down for this purpose. I placed it on the parlor table. Because she used ink. He looked at the back. Mrs. Augusta Partridge and her daughter Helen, I read aloud. Which word is not erasure? He closed his eyes. Samuel, look at it. I have looked. No, you have glanced and suffered. Look. He opened his eyes. The room held its breath around him. For once,
Augusta was not there to tell him what he saw. "She was frightened," I said. "Can you see that?" His voice was low. "Yes." "Did you see it Monday?" No answer. "Did you?" "I thought she was shy." "You thought what helped you continue." He sat down suddenly. "Ruth, I do love her." That hurt more than if he had said he did not. A loveless man is simple. A weak, loving man is a maze built over a well. "Then love her where she is," I said. "Not where Augusta tells you she would look better." He rubbed his face with both hands. "Augusta lost everything." "She lost a husband. That is not everything." "There was a child." I went still. He looked up, regret already in his face, as if the secret had slipped from him and he feared Augusta more than truth. "A baby. Helen. She lived 5 months." The room blurred at its edges. Helen. Not a fancy. Not only family dignity. A grave. "When?" I asked. "Before I met you. The winter after Mr. Partridge died." "And no one told me?" "Augusta does not speak of it." "She spoke it onto my daughter." He bowed his head. For a moment, pity rose in me. I imagined Augusta younger, perhaps less armored, sitting beside a cradle that had gone quiet. I imagined grief with no child to hold, no milk wanted, no small hand reaching. I understood, in a flash so sharp it was almost mercy, how a woman could turn loss into hunger. Then I looked at the photograph. Understanding is not permission. "Samuel," I said, "your sister may mourn her Helen until the end of her life. She may keep a room empty. She may wear black silk in July. She may hate God if she likes. But she may not pour her dead child over mine and call it rescue." His shoulders shook once. "Tell that to her," I said. "She will not hear it from me." "Then speak louder." He looked at me helplessly, and I saw the boy he had been. Mother gone, father coughing, Augusta tying his boots, Augusta cutting bread, Augusta deciding, Augusta surviving so hard that no one else in the house was allowed to choose. I could almost forgive that boy. But the man had brought my daughter to a photographer. "What do you want from me?" he asked. "At the hearing? Tell the truth." "If I do, Augusta will never forgive me." "If you do not, I will." He stared at me. "That was not comfort," I said. "Choose which loss you can live with." He left without touching the photograph. On Sunday morning I took Nell to church, because absence would be interpreted as guilt, and because I needed to sit somewhere larger than my fear. The pews smelled of varnish, wool, and damp umbrellas. Hymns rose, fell, and gathered dust in the rafters. I heard none of the sermon. My mind moved from Samuel to Augusta to the hearing, to the room above Larkin's studio and back again, wearing a path. Nell leaned against me, drowsy. She had the tin bird in her muff. I'd let her bring it, though Mrs. Calder said toys in church invited commentary. "Let them comment," I said. Mrs. Calder smiled. "That is the first sensible vanity I have heard from you." After the service, people turned slowly into aisles, the way church people do when they want to see trouble without appearing eager. Augusta stood near the vestibule. Samuel was not with her. She wore black, of course, but not the velvet hat. Her face looked older in daylight, the skin at the corners of her mouth drawn tight. For the first time, I wondered what she saw when she looked at Nell. A child? A second chance? A wound shaped like a girl? She approached us. Mrs. Calder stepped closer. Nell slipped her hand into mine. "I will not make a scene in church," Augusta said. "How gracious. Her eyes moved to Nell.
Good morning, child.
Nell did not answer. Augusta's mouth tightened.
Have you been taught rudeness now?
Nell's fingers dug into my glove. I knelt in the aisle, heedless of eyes.
You may say good morning if you wish. You do not have to.
Nell looked at Augusta. Her voice was small but clear.
My name is Nell.
The vestibule went quiet, in that particular way a crowd goes quiet when it has been handed a fact too sharp to swallow. Augusta's face whitened.
Of course,
she said, but she did not say the name. The hearing took place in a room at the courthouse that was smaller than I expected. Important pain often receives plain furniture. There was a table, chairs, a high window, a stove that clanked, and a judge with white whiskers who looked as if he had listened to every form of human foolishness and ranked them privately. Mr. Alden sat beside me. Nell was not present. Mrs. Calder had taken her to the public library, where Miss Voss promised to show her a book with colored plates of birds. I had told Nell I was going to speak to a man about the photograph.
Will he fix it?
She asked. He may help stop it from growing. Augusta arrived with a lawyer from a better street than Mr. Alden's. Samuel came alone. He sat between us at first, then seemed to understand the geography of the room and moved closer to neither. The judge asked questions. Mr. Alden spoke. Augusta's lawyer spoke of generosity, opportunity, stability, a child's prospects, Mrs. Partridge's affection, the crowded conditions of my residence, my employment outside the home. He did not say unfit. He laid the word on the table without removing its cloth. Mr. Alden laid down the cabinet card. The judge adjusted his spectacles. This is the child? Yes, Your Honor. And the inscription? Written at Mrs. Partridge's request. Augusta's lawyer rose. A sentimental expression, Your Honor. Sit down, Mr. Vale. I can read sentiment when it behaves itself. The judge turned the card over. Mrs. Augusta Partridge and her daughter, Helen. The words sounded different in his voice. Less like a spell, more like evidence. He looked at Augusta. Mrs. Partridge, is this your handwriting? She sat very straight.
No, it was written by the studio.
At your instruction. Silence. Mrs. Partridge.
Yes.
Is the child your daughter? Her gloved hands closed in her lap.
Not by birth.
Not by adoption. Not by guardianship. Not by court order.
No.
Then we will begin by calling the thing what it is not. I looked down at my hands. They were clenched so tightly the knuckles had gone pale. Miss Harrow's statement was read. Mrs. Pike's statement was read. Augusta's lawyer objected twice and was overruled twice. Then Samuel was called. He stood as if his bones had become separate from one another. The judge asked whether he had taken Nell to Bay State portrait rooms. Yes. Whether I had known. No. Whether he had discussed Nell residing with Augusta. Samuel looked at his sister. Augusta did not look back. She stared at the judge, face fixed. Yes, Samuel said. Whether he had intended such residence to begin soon. His voice failed once. He began again. Yes. Whether I had agreed. No. Had you asked her? Samuel swallowed. No. Why not? The room held still. Because she would have refused. There are truths that arrive too late to save love, but soon enough to save a child. I sat there and let that one enter the record. Augusta closed her eyes. Her lawyer tried to recover. He spoke of temporary arrangements, of misunderstanding, of an emotional mother inflaming a generous plan. The judge listened until he had heard enough. This court is not persuaded that a child benefits from being transferred by stealth into the care of an aunt, however comfortable the aunt's house. Nor is it charmed by improvements made to the child's name without the mother's knowledge. Mrs. Bell appears to be employed, respectable, and attentive. If Mr. Bell wishes any alteration in custody or residence, he may petition properly and prepare to explain why he has begun improperly. He signed an order forbidding removal of Nell from my care without my written consent or further order. The pen scratched. That sound was smaller than I thought justice would be. When it was done, I remained seated because I did not trust my legs. Augusta rose. Her lawyer whispered to her. She ignored him and came toward me. Mr. Alden stiffened. Augusta stopped an arm's length away. Up close, I saw powder gathered in the lines beside her nose. "You have made certain she will have less," she said. I stood. "No, I have made certain she will have her mother." "You think that enough because it is all you have." "I think it necessary because you tried to remove it." Her face trembled once. Not grief exactly, not rage exactly. Something older and less clean. "You do not know what it is to bury a child." The room receded. There it was at last. Helen standing between us, dead and demanding. "No," I said, "and if God is merciful, I never will. But you know what it is. Why would you wish even a shadow of that on me?" She looked at me then as if I had struck a match in a dark room. For 1 second I thought she would answer honestly. Instead, she said, "You are a cruel woman. Today, perhaps." She left. Samuel remained by the table. His face had gone gray. "Ruth," he said. I gathered the cabinet card, Miss Harrow's statement, Mrs. Pike's statement, and the court order. Paper, paper, paper. Thin blades. "Not here." "Where?" I looked at him. Husband, father, boy Augusta raised. Man who had chosen silence until silence became too expensive. "I do not know yet." I went to the library for Nell. She was sitting at a table with a book open before her, the tin bird beside the inkstand. Miss Voss was showing her a plate of a bluebird. Mrs. Calder sat nearby, pretending to read a newspaper upside down. When Nell saw me, she slid from the chair and ran. "Did he fix it?" I knelt and held up the folded order. "He stopped it from growing." "Can I still be Nell?" My throat closed. "Yes." "Can I go home?" Home. I looked at Mrs. Calder, at Miss Voss, at the book, the bird, the child in my arms. I thought of our narrow room, Samuel's key, Augusta's carriage, the hall where every knock had become a threat. "We are going to make a new home," I said. Nell considered this with the seriousness of 5. "Can the bird come?" "The bird is invited." "Can Mrs. Calder come?" Mrs. Calder folded the upside-down paper. "I will visit and criticize the dust." Nell nodded, satisfied. "Then it will be a good home." We moved above Larkin's studio 2 days later. Moved is too grand a word. We carried. Mrs. Calder's nephew brought a handcart. Miss Voss wrapped Nell's books in newspaper. Josie cried into a towel and gave Nell 3 biscuits for the journey, though the journey was 12 minutes long. Mrs. Calder stood in the hall and gave instructions with the energy of a general defending a nation. Samuel was not there. He had sent a note asking to help. I had not answered. Our possessions looked both pitiful and stubborn in daylight. 1 trunk, 2 chairs, bedding, a kettle, my sewing basket, Nell's clothes, the tin bird, 3 books, a chipped cup Nell liked because it had a painted strawberry, and the small framed photograph of my father standing outside his frame shop before illness bent him. I left behind the chair Samuel had bought when we married. It belonged to a life that no longer knew where to sit.
Mrs. Larkin's storage room had one window overlooking the alley, sloped walls, and the smell of old chemicals no scrubbing could fully defeat. It was cold. It was plain. It was ours, by a key handed to me in front of witnesses. Nell walked around it slowly.
"Where is the south room?" she asked. "We have an east window. Is east good? East gets morning."
She stood on tiptoe to look out. Below, a delivery boy carried crates. Across the alley, a woman shook a rug from a window. Beyond the roofs, smoke rose and moved. Worcester did not look improved from above. It looked honest. Nell took the blue ribbon from her pocket. She'd carried it there since the hearing. I thought she meant to put it in her hair, but she tied it around the tin bird's bent key.
"So he knows his name," she said. "The bird?" "Yes. Aunt Augusta said he was shabby."
Aunt Augusta has never understood birds. Nell smiled. That first night, the wind pushed under the eaves and the floor creaked whenever anyone moved below. Nell lay beside me on a mattress made up on the floor, her hair loose, the tin bird tucked near her pillow. She did not sleep easily. Neither did I.
"Mama?" "Yes?" "Will Papa know where we are?"
Yes.
"Can he come?"
The question did not wound me as I expected. It entered softly. Children do not stop loving because adults mishandle love, nor should they have to. "He can ask to see you," I said, "and we will decide in a way that keeps you safe."
"Is he bad?"
I stared into the dark. Outside, a wagon rolled through the alley, wheels jolting over stone. He did a bad thing.
"Is Aunt Augusta bad?"
There was a smaller version of myself, frightened and furious, that wanted to say yes, a clean answer, a locked gate. But Nell would grow. Someday she would find the world too complicated for answers I had sharpened in pain. Aunt Augusta is full of sorrow and pride, I said.
Those can make a person dangerous.
"Like fire?"
Yes, fire can warm a room or burn a house. You do not hand it a child. She was quiet. Then,
"Am I Helen too?"
I turned toward her. In the dim light, I could just see her face. No, Helen was another child.
"Where is she?"
She died before you were born. Nell absorbed this.
"Was Aunt Augusta her mama?"
Yes.
"Maybe she forgot you cannot take another one."
I touched her hair. Maybe she remembered only wanting. Nell yawned.
"I do not want her to be sad."
You do not have to cure her sadness.
"Good. I am small."
At last, she slept. I remained awake, looking at the ceiling, listening to the studio settle below us. I thought of Augusta, alone in her fine house with roses on the south room wall. I thought of Samuel, somewhere between sister and wife, perhaps discovering too late that a man cannot stand in two doorways forever. I thought of Helen, the baby I had never known, whose name had become a hand reaching out of a grave. Then I thought of Nell's question. Am I Helen too? No, that was the answer I would spend the rest of my life protecting. No, you are not the answer to someone else's grief. No, you are not a room prepared by a woman who refuses to knock. No, you are not a photograph caption, not a school inquiry, not a compromise between adults who fear inconvenience. You are Nell. You are yourself before you are useful to anyone. The next weeks were not triumphant. Stories like ours are often told as if the court order ends the suffering and a woman walks into sunlight with her child while violins do what violins are paid to do. That is not how life behaved. Life asked for rent. Life asked who would watch Nell when I worked downstairs. Life asked why Mrs. Bell no longer lived with Mr. Bell. Life asked whether a woman who left her husband might be more trouble than her retouching was worth.
Mrs. Larkin answered the last question by putting an extra chair behind the curtain for Nell and saying anyone offended by a quiet child could be photographed elsewhere. Mr. Larkin pretended this had been his idea. Nell learned to sit with crayons and paper, drawing birds with important feet. When customers came too near the curtain, she made herself small, and I would say, "You may take up your space, Nell." At first, she looked around as if space were a thing that could be confiscated. Then, slowly, she believed me. Samuel wrote twice. The first letter was apology tangled in defense. He regretted the method, but still believed Augusta's offer had merit. I placed it in a drawer and did not answer. The second letter came a week later. Ruth, I went to Walnut Street yesterday and saw the south room. There were dresses in the wardrobe, a primer on the table, a small bed. Augusta had placed the photograph on the mantel. She spoke of Nell as if the matter had been delayed, not ended. I am ashamed that I did not understand until I saw the room. Samuel. I read that sentence many times. Ashamed is a beginning, but some beginnings arrive after a house has burned. I answered with 3 lines. Samuel, you may see Nell Saturday at Mrs. Calder's parlor from 2 until 4. I will be present. Do not bring Augusta. Ruth. He came Saturday with a paper parcel and eyes too bright. Nell hid behind my skirt at first. Then he knelt and showed her the parcel. Not a fine doll, not a school book, not anything Augusta would have chosen. It was a little wooden bird, carved badly, with one wing larger than the other. I tried to make it, he said. It came out crooked. Nell looked at me. You may take it if you want, I said. She took it. Samuel's mouth trembled. I thought your tin bird might like a friend. The visit was awkward, then gentle, then awkward again. That is how broken trust moves. Not in a straight line, but like someone crossing ice, testing each step and hearing cracks from places that looked solid. He did not ask Nell to kiss him. I gave him credit for that. When he left, Nell watched from the window. Papa looks smaller, she said. He may feel smaller. Is smaller bad? Sometimes, smaller is where people begin to fit through the right door. She leaned against me. Can he come again? Yes, if he keeps coming as himself. Not as Aunt Augusta's talking? Not as anyone's talking. In April, Augusta sent a package. Mrs. Larkin brought it upstairs with the expression of a person carrying a questionable smell. It was wrapped in brown paper and tied with black string. The handwriting was Augusta's. Mrs. Ruth Bell. Not Mrs. Samuel Bell, not Dear Ruth. A legal shape of my name. Inside was the blue ribbon. Not Nell's ribbon from the photograph. That one lay in our room, tied to the tin bird. This was another ribbon, wider, better silk, the exact blue of a clear, cold morning. Beneath it was a small card. For Eleanor. No apology, no explanation, no signature. I sat on the bed holding it while Nell watched. Is it from her? Yes. Does it make me Helen? No, it says Eleanor. Nell came closer. That is my Sunday name. Yes. Can I touch it? I gave it to her. She rubbed the silk between thumb and finger. It is fine. Very fine. Do I have to wear it? No. Can the bird wear it? I smiled despite myself. The bird is becoming vain. She tied the wide ribbon not around the bird but around the handle of our trunk. For going places, as Eleanor, she said. I left it there. That night, I dreamed of the cabinet card. In the dream, the ink on the back was wet. I wiped it with my sleeve, and the words smeared until I could no longer read them. When I turned the photograph over, Nell was gone from the image. Augusta sat alone with one hand resting on the empty chair.
I woke with tears on my face. The next day I took the photograph down from the shelf where I kept the court papers. I had not looked at it for 2 weeks. Augusta's face seemed different now, though of course the card had not changed. She looked less triumphant than desperate, less like a thief than like a woman who had mistaken theft for resurrection. I turned it over. Mrs. Augusta Partridge and her daughter, Helen. The words still angered me, but the anger no longer shook my hands. After work, I carried the card to Mrs. Pike at Bay State Portrait Rooms. She looked surprised to see me.
Do you need another statement?
No, I need a photograph.
Of the child?
Of us. Her eyes softened.
Today?
Today.
Is she ready?
I looked down at Nell, who had charcoal on one sleeve and the biscuit crumb near her mouth. She is herself. That is ready enough. Mrs. Pike took us upstairs to the light room. The painted backdrop showed a garden no one could mistake for real. I sat in the chair. Nell stood beside me, then climbed into my lap without asking. She may blur if she moves, Mrs. Pike warned. Then let us blur. Nell leaned her head against my shoulder. I did not smooth her hair flat. I did not adjust the ribbon on the trunk handle that she had insisted on wearing looped around her wrist. I did not arrange her into someone else's idea of a daughter. Mrs. Pike disappeared beneath the black cloth. Hold still if you can, Nell whispered. What will it say on the back? I held her tighter. What do you think? She considered. Mama and Nell. Good. The camera clicked. When the card was ready a week later, Mrs. Pike had written exactly that. Mama and Nell. Not Mrs. Ruth Bell and her daughter Eleanor. Not a name suitable for school. Not a phrase for court. Mama and Nell, in plain ink on the back of a cream card. I placed it on our mantel beside the tin bird and the crooked wooden bird Samuel had made. For several days, Nell checked it each morning as if the words might change while we slept. They did not. Spring came. It came without asking whether we were prepared. Rain cleaned soot from windows and left streaks behind. Women changed from heavy coats to lighter jackets. The studio grew warmer under the roof. Nell's cheeks browned from walks with Miss Voss. Samuel kept his Saturday visits. He began speaking to Mr. Alden about a formal arrangement, one that named days, hours, responsibilities, and boundaries. He did not like that word. Boundaries. He did not object to it, either. Augusta did not visit. I saw her once in May from across Main Street. She stood outside a bookseller dressed in gray instead of black. For a moment, she looked like any other woman of means deciding whether to purchase a volume. Then she turned and saw us. Nell was holding my hand. Augusta looked at her. I felt the old alarm rise, quick and hot, but Augusta did not cross the street. She inclined her head, not quite a bow, not quite surrender. Nell hid partly behind me, then looked out. "Good morning," she called. Augusta's face changed. Pain passed over it, so plain that even the traffic and distance could not disguise it. "Good morning, Eleanor," she answered. Then she went into the shop. Nell looked up at me. "She said it." "Yes." "My Sunday, ma'am." "Yes." "Was that good?" I watched the shop door close behind Augusta. It was something.
Something good?
Something less bad. Nell accepted that. Children are often better than adults at accepting unfinished answers. In June, Samuel asked to speak with me alone after his visit. Mrs. Calder took Nell to the kitchen to choose a jam tart, though jam tarts had clearly been arranged in advance. Samuel stood in the parlor, turning his hat in his hands. "I have taken a room on Pleasant Street," he said. "Away from Walnut Street?" "Yes." "Does Augusta know?" "Yes." "How did she receive it?" He almost smiled.
As if I had joined a circus.
"Have you?"
No, the circus would require more courage.
It was the first joke he had made without asking permission from an invisible sister. I did not laugh, but I noticed. He grew serious.
"I am not asking you to return."
"Good." The word struck him. He nodded once, accepting the bruise.
"I am asking whether, in time, I might court you properly."
I stared at him. "We are married."
"That is not what I mean."
I knew what he meant. He wanted to begin again, not by pretending nothing had happened, but by approaching the woman he had failed as if she had the right to refuse him. It was not an answer I could give that day.
"Samuel, I do not know. I know. I may never know differently. I know that too."
He put on his hat, then removed it again, nervous.
"Ruth, when I saw that room at Augusta's, with the dresses and the little bed, I understood something ugly about myself. I was relieved."
I waited.
Relieved that someone else had decided.
Relieved that I would not have to choose between my sister's grief and your anger, between poverty and pride, between being a poor father and a disloyal brother. I told myself it was for Nell, but part of me was grateful to be weak.
That sentence did not heal me, but it was clean. Clean pain is easier to dress than infected kindness. "Thank you for telling the truth," I said. He looked at the floor. "Too late." "Yes." He nodded.
"I will come Saturday."
"At 2.
At 2.
After he left, Mrs. Calder came in with 2 jam tarts on a plate. "Well," she said. He moved to Pleasant Street. "A man leaving his sister's house at his age, wonders never cease." He asked to court me. Mrs. Calder handed me a tart. "Make him bring references." I laughed then, truly laughed. It startled me so much I cried afterward, which annoyed Mrs. Calder because tears diluted the jam. Summer arrived, hot and loud. The studio roof trapped heat until the air seemed to have weight.
Mrs. Larkin placed bowls of water near the windows and declared science would help. It did not, but the bowls gave everyone something to blame. Nell grew stronger in small, visible ways. She began asking questions without lowering her voice first. She corrected a customer who called her Helen after mishearing Mrs. Larkin.
"I am Nell,"
she said.
"Helen is dead."
The customer nearly dropped her gloves. Mrs. Larkin coughed into her hand and told Nell perhaps not all facts required the same volume. I took Nell aside and explained gentleness. She listened, then said,
"But if I say it softly, they may not hear."
There was wisdom there I could not entirely correct. In July, we received an invitation from Augusta, not to dinner, not to Walnut Street, to the cemetery. The card came in a small envelope. Mrs. Larkin delivered it upstairs as if it might bite. Mrs. Partridge asks whether Mrs. Bell and Eleanor would permit her to show them Helen's grave on Saturday morning, if Mrs. Bell judges it suitable. The wording was stiff enough to stand alone, yet there were 2 things in it I could not ignore. She asked, and she left judgment to me. Nell watched my face.
"What is it?"
I read it aloud.
"Do we have to?"
"No."
"Do you want to?"
I sat beside her on the bed. I do not know. Part of me does. Part of me wants never to see Augusta again.
"Can both parts go?"
That sounds crowded.
Mrs. Calder says people are mostly crowds.
Mrs. Calder should charge admission to her wisdom. Nell picked at the quilt.
If we see Helen's grave, will Aunt Augusta stop looking for her in me?
The question was too large for 5. I hated everyone who had made her carry it. I do not know, I said, but maybe we can show her where to look. We went. I told Samuel, and he asked to come. I said no. This was not his bridge to stand on. He accepted it.
The cemetery lay north of town, shaded by elms, with stones in rows and family plots fenced in iron. Augusta waited by the gate in a grey dress and black gloves. She held no flowers. Her hands were empty.
Mrs. Bell,
she said.
Mrs. Partridge.
Her eyes went to Nell.
Eleanor.
Nell held my hand tightly.
Good morning.
We walked in silence. Gravel clicked under our shoes. Birds made reckless summer noise in the trees. At last Augusta stopped before a small white stone near the partridge plot. Helen May Partridge, beloved child, 1886. Only 1 year carved there. Born and died within the same line of time. Nell stared.
She was a baby.
Augusta's face tightened.
Yes. She did not get big enough to like birds.
Augusta's mouth opened, but no sound came at first.
No.
Nell let go of my hand and stepped closer to the stone. I almost pulled her back. Then I stopped myself. Fear is not the same as protection, though it wears the same coat.
Nell took from her pocket a tiny blue thread she had saved from the ribbon on our trunk. She laid it at the base of the stone.
This is not all of it,
she said to Augusta.
Just a piece.
Augusta covered her mouth with her hand. I looked away, not to spare her, but because some grief deserves not to be watched even when it has done harm. After a while, Augusta said,
I thought, if I could call someone by her name, I might hear it in the house again.
Her voice was raw, no polish, no parlor. I said nothing.
That is not an excuse,
she added. Still, I said nothing. I had learned that silence can be a tool as well as a prison. This silence asked her to continue.
I wronged you,
she said. The words seemed to cost her more than money ever had. Yes, I said.
I wronged the child.
Yes. Nell looked between us. Children want apologies to become bridges at once. Adults know some rivers are wider. Augusta turned to her.
Eleanor, I called you by a name that was not yours because I missed a child who was gone. That was wrong. You did not have to carry my missing.
Nell leaned against my skirt.
I am sorry your baby died.
Augusta shut her eyes. A tear escaped, startling because I had never seen her fail to command her face.
Thank you,
she whispered.
But I am Nell.
Yes, Augusta said.
You are Nell.
That did not redeem her. I do not like stories where one graveyard apology washes a house clean. Harm has roots. It finds floorboards. It leaves marks on children who wake asking whether their mother will come home. But there are moments when a person turns, not all the way, not enough, but toward the truth. I saw Augusta do that beside Helen's stone. It mattered. It did not settle the bill. And the walk back to the gate, Augusta asked whether she might send books for Nell's lessons. I said she might send them to me, and I would decide. She accepted this with only a small tightening around the eyes.
Progress, like justice, often sounds like a pen scratching paper. Small, unsatisfactory, real. By September, Nell could read simple pages. She read signs aloud as we walked, sometimes incorrectly but with great authority. Samuel continued coming Saturdays. Once he brought flowers for me. Not expensive ones, not roses, just asters tied with string. I put them in a jar. That was not forgiveness. It was a jar with flowers in it. Sometimes a woman must let small things remain small so they do not steal the shape of large things. He rented a second room on Pleasant Street, larger, with a window over a bakery. He told me this without asking us to fill it. I appreciated that. Augusta sent books twice and a winter coat once. The coat was fine, dark green wool with good buttons. I kept it. Pride is not warmth. Nell wore it when the first frost came, and I wrote Augusta a note of thanks that contained no affection and no cruelty. In October, the photograph from Bay State portrait rooms became useful again. A woman from St. Clement's, not Miss Harrow, came to Larkin's studio to sit for a portrait. While Mrs. Larkin arranged her collar, the woman recognized me. I saw recognition move across her face like a curtain lifting.
Mrs. Bell,
she said carefully.
Yes. I believe we nearly received your daughter.
You nearly received a story about my daughter. Mrs. Larkin froze behind the camera. The customer flushed.
I meant no offense.
I know. She looked embarrassed, then gathered courage.
Miss Harrow said your little girl remained with you.
She did.
I'm glad.
It was the first time someone from that world said glad without making it sound like charity. After she left, Mrs. Larkin emerged from beneath the cloth.
You handled that well. I wanted to bite. Naturally, but biting leaves marks judges understand too easily.
That evening, I took out the old cabinet card. I no longer kept it on the shelf, but in an envelope with the court papers. The image had begun to fade slightly at the edges, as photographs do. Augusta and Nell stood fixed in a lie that had failed. I turned it over, and for the first time, wrote beneath the false caption in my own hand, "This was not true." Then I placed beside it the newer card, Mama and Nell. This was. Winter came again. Snow changed Worcester into a quieter version of itself for a few hours at a time, until carts and boots turned the streets grey. The room above the studio was as cold as Mrs. Larkin had promised. We stuffed rags near the window, warmed bricks by the stove downstairs, and carried them up wrapped in towels, wore shawls indoors, and discovered that laughter makes visible breath look less like hardship. On Christmas Eve, Samuel visited with Mrs. Calder present and brought Nell a real clockwork bird, painted blue, that could hop 3 steps before falling over. She adored it at once. The tin bird, the wooden bird, and the new bird formed a family on the mantel. Nell arranged them by injury: bent key, crooked wing, unreliable legs. "They are all still birds," she said. Samuel looked at me when she said it. I looked away first. Augusta sent no gift that Christmas. Instead, on the 26th, she sent a note. "Mrs. Bell, I have placed Helen's cradle with the church sale. I kept it too long. If the money received may be used for coal for families in need, I think that fitting. I tell you not to seek praise, but because you and Eleanor were made to suffer from my refusal to know what was gone. Augusta Partridge." I read it twice. Then I folded it and placed it with the court papers, not because it belonged to the wound, but because it belonged to the record of how people try, poorly and late, to stop being ruled by it. Nell asked what it said. "Aunt Augusta gave away a cradle." "Helen's?" "Yes." Nell was quiet. "Was that hard?" "I think so." "Did it help?" "Maybe not yet." She nodded. "When my bird lost his key, I kept the key, even though it did not work. You tied a ribbon to it." "That helped." I smiled. "Then perhaps Aunt Augusta needs a ribbon." Nell considered this with alarming seriousness. "Not mine." "No, not yours." In January, Samuel asked again whether he might court me. We were walking after his visit. Mrs. Calder had taken Nell inside because the wind was cruel.
Samuel and I stood near the corner, breath white in the air. He wore a patched glove. I had mended it in another life. "You may walk with us Sundays," I said. His face lit. Then he controlled it. "Thank you." "That is not a promise." "I understand." "And not every Sunday." "I understand." "And if Augusta appears without warning, the walking ends." "She will not." "Samuel." "I will not bring her." We walked the next Sunday. It was stiff and strange. Nell ran ahead to step on ice and break it with her heel. Samuel asked about her lessons. I answered.
He asked about the studio. I answered less. He did not push. At the corner, he offered his arm because the pavement was slick. I looked at it, then at him, then took it for 3 steps over the ice. Only 3. But 3 steps can be a country when taken freely. I do not know what we became after that. Husband and wife remained true in law. Separated remained true in address. Courting sounded foolish and yet useful, like teaching an old song to new lungs. We did not hurry to name it. I had learned names have power. I would not hand one over too soon. What I know is this. Nell stopped asking if I would come home every morning. One day in February, I realized she had not asked in a week. The absence of the question frightened me at first, as if I had misplaced something. Then I saw her sitting by the window, reading to the tin bird, not watching the door, not counting the minutes until the world changed without her consent. Trust had returned quietly, without ceremony. It did not announce itself. It simply sat down in the room and began breathing. That evening, as I brushed her hair, Nell said,
"Mama, when I am big, may I have my picture made with you again?"
"Of course."
"And can we write the back ourselves?"
"Yes."
"What will it say?"
"Whatever is true then." She smiled at our reflection in the small mirror.
"Maybe it will say, Mama and Nell, still."
I kissed the top of her head. That would be a fine thing to be true. Years later, when people asked why I kept 2 photographs in the same envelope, I told them because one taught me what could be taken and the other taught me what could be kept. In the first, my child stands beside a woman who wanted grief to have another chance at motherhood. The dress is wrong. The name is wrong. The hand on the chair is certain. My daughter is frightened and trying not to show it. In the second, Nell sits in my lap with messy hair and a ribbon looped around her wrist. One of my sleeves is wrinkled. There is a shadow near my jaw. Mrs. Pike offered to soften, and I told her to leave it. Nell's mouth is blurred because she moved. If you look closely, you can see she was turning toward me. On the back, in plain ink, it says, Mama and Nell. No gilt edge has ever improved on that. I did not save my family in the way people mean when they ask for happy endings. I did not sew the old cloth back together and pretend the tear was decoration. Augusta remained Augusta, though less certain. Samuel remained Samuel, though more awake. I remained tired, employed, sharp at times, tender at others, and no longer willing to apologize for the work that fed my child. But I saved the truth of who belonged to whom, not ownership, not possession, the longing, the kind a child means when she reaches in sleep and does not have to open her eyes before knowing whose hand she has found. The kind a mother means when the world writes another name and she takes up her own pen. The kind that says, you may have a better house, a finer school, silk ribbon, a south room with roses on the wall, and sorrow old enough to command pity. But you may not have my child's self. You may not have her name. You may not have the place in her life where my voice answers from the doorway every evening as long as breath remains in me. I came home. I am here. You are Nell.